Most of us know someone who struggles with addiction, but it becomes even more heartbreaking when it's someone you know and love. You've tried everything, but it seems as though there's no hope. Today's guest has a lot of success helping those with addictions. Dr. Greg Jantz, he's a psychologist, author and founder of the Center, a Place of Hope, and one of the top facilities for treatment of depression in the United States. One of his latest books is called When a Loved One is Addicted. Dr. Jantz, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Oh, good to be with you. And it's a challenging but important topic.
Especially during the pandemic right now, a lot of people are feeling depressed and anxious, and they're turning to various addictions to help them cope with it right now. So where are we at when it comes to addiction across North America?
Well, across North America, here's what we know. There are three predominant issues going on. Very high anxiety, followed by depression, followed by addiction. Addiction rates are up in every category, whether it be digital addiction, whether it be alcohol. I mean, we're making record sales, which is a funny thing to say, with alcohol. So the level, and part of what happened during the pandemic is alcohol consumption, as you might have guessed, did go way up. We also know that cannabis use, we haven't mentioned food yet, food's in there as well, and the misuse of prescription drugs. So anything really related to addiction, the numbers are higher than really we've ever seen.
Now, what are some of the traits or the telltale signs of addiction outside of the fact you don't have as much money in your bank account?
Yeah, well, that will be one you'll notice, absolutely. The other is it's secrecy. I try to hide this. I try to keep it away from others. So anytime there's secrecy, there may be shame. I'm really embarrassed about this. And then we play the game with ourselves that says, you know what, it's really not hurting anybody. I can stop this at any time. And so we start to move into what we call denial in order to justify our behavior. Over time, here's what to look at. Over time, that addictive behavior, it's like a ticking time bomb. Something will break. Something will break down. Sometimes it's physically, sometimes it's in a relationship. But addiction will lead you down a road, ultimately, that's very self-destructive, a road you didn't want to go down.
Do you think the reason why a lot of people struggle with addiction is because they simply want to escape from reality?
Well, they want to, and that's a good way to put it. They want to mood elevate. I'm tired of this depression. I'm tired of this anxiety. I'm tired of what's going on in the world. I'm tired. And you get into that mode and you go, I just want to feel different. Okay, so what do I do to mood elevate? Well, I can binge eat. I can drink. I can do escapism behavior online. You name it, anything to temporarily cause me to feel differently.
Now, you say that there are certain fears that seem to fuel addictive behavior. Can you flesh that out a little bit for us?
Oh, yeah. And, behind a lot of addiction, and by the way, it's so easy for any of us, and we should just say that, anybody can slide into this. So if you've been living with a lot of anxiety, okay, let's look at the season we're in. Has there been some anxiety? Okay. We look at what's going on in the world today, and we go, there's some anxiety, there's some unknowns. So anytime that we have unknowns that are significant about our future, about what's happening in government, about what may be happening that feels totally out of our control, that will be a prompt, a fear that will cause us at some point, I need a new way of coping with this.
Are there certain specific barriers that prevent those who are battling addiction from seeking help?
Well, one barrier is going to be embarrassment. It's like, I should have this figured out. I should be able to quit. And so it's that embarrassment. The other is the whole area of getting help, mental health and addiction. Sometimes, depending on where we live, it's looked at that, well, what is wrong with you? And so the judgment of a person who may be struggling could be another barrier. Another barrier is I'm not hurting anybody else. This is just me, and you don't understand. I have to do this. And so the barrier could be that denial, which can be pretty strong.
We had alcoholism in our family, and I had to go to Al-Anon meetings to learn how to cope, adjust, and be able to help this individual in our family who battled with alcoholism. And one thing I do remember from Al-Anon that really stood out for me, doctor, was when they said, you never tell a person battling alcoholism that you got a problem with drinking, because the walls, the barriers will go up. You ask the person, do you love me? Do you care about me? Of course I do. I have a problem. Can you help me with my problem? Yes, I want to help you. I have a problem with your drinking. So basically, it puts the onus on yourself so the walls don't go up for them. So how else can we really help people with their addictions, especially when it comes to alcoholism?
Well, and that's very, very good advice. And one of the things that we got to stay in the game with them. There's times where it feels so hopeless, and you go, oh, the person relapsed again, and it can be very discouraging. So we want to separate the addiction from the person. A lot of times when you're talking to a person who's struggling with addiction, you're kind of talking to that addiction. And remember who they were before addiction got a stronghold. And so we're fighting really the stronghold of that addiction in a person's life. Stay in the game with them. We're probably not going to be their main solution, but we can, with appropriate boundaries and appropriate interventions, we can help them get the help they need, but it's something they will have to decide. And I think that's why it's so, you can see how destructive it is, but then you go, why don't they get help? That's the power of the addiction. One of the things is we don't want to enable or contribute to it. Recently, I had a mom who said, you know what, my son came by and I knew exactly what he was going to do, but I gave him $20 just hoping he'd buy food. But she knew. Okay, so there's a tough love that says I cannot do things that are going to contribute to this addiction.
You know what I've noticed as well, doctor, is that everybody has a different rock bottom level. Sometimes they have to hit rock bottom before they reach out for help. Let's talk a bit about that.
A rock bottom means things got bad. But a rock bottom for one person is different than the other. Some people, and I've seen this, they may end up homeless. They may end up losing everything in the relationships that they once really cherished because of that addiction, the power of that addiction. We see that a lot with opiate, the pain pill medication. That addiction is so strong. We see it in those that are the fentanyl addiction. So we know that ultimately it is life and death.
Why are boundaries so important when it comes to dealing with an addict?
Because an addict is a specialist in manipulation. They can manipulate you, the situation. That's what addiction does. It makes you really good at manipulating people and situations. And so a boundary just says, I need to protect myself from that manipulation. A boundary says, I love you and I cannot do that, whatever that might be. So a boundary is self-preservation as well as it can be life-saving to the person.
Do you feel that sometimes people will use an addiction, such as drugs or alcohol, to fill that void in their lives because they simply don't have God in their lives?
Well, I believe an addiction always fulfills a purpose. It can change how you feel temporarily. It helps you avoid oftentimes reality. And it can fill up that emptiness. It's like, man, there's something missing. Well, I end up turning to addiction to temporarily try to fulfill whatever that is. And I don't know if that's necessarily a conscious choice, but I think that's what ends up happening. So we need, and you look, most recovery programs contain a spiritual component, which is interesting, because when we survey our clients or patients, like a year after leaving here, they'll say, you know what? I got so much help from the Center, a Place of Hope, and I learned new tools, but it was really my faith that kept me on course for the long run. And so we know that's got to be a foundation of recovery.
Now, what advice would you give someone who feels helpless and hopeless to bring about change in themselves or maybe in someone else that they really and truly love?
We need to remember that an addiction lies. An addiction distorts reality. Addiction tells you you deserve this. Addiction tells you you really have no value. And so you're fighting the lies of addiction. And so we've got to look beyond that. Look, you are not your addiction. Don't take it on as my self identity. When we walk around and say, I'm an addict and this is how I guess I was made, and you live that way, that's surrendering to the addiction. We believe, and because we see it happen, that there is hope, and hope comes when there's a plan. I may need to surrender a plan over to others who can help me. I do believe that people struggling with addiction would have changed. Most of them say, I tried to, but I failed. They know they need change when they're really honest with themselves, but they need help doing it.
Let's talk about the addiction when it comes to seniors addicted to opioids or painkillers. We hear a lot of
Yeah,
that. We see the statistics each and every year
yeah.
across North America. How should we best approach that? Because that's a serious issue as well.
Oh, absolutely. So, an opiate or pain medication is a very easy addiction to slide into. There's approximately every day, these are rough estimates, but we know that there are over 100 deaths every day in North America due to an opiate overdose. We know that many times this started off very innocently. Person had surgery, person had pain, and they became very addicted very quickly. And so it's a slow but certain path to at times death and destruction. Um, what happens in the brain that makes that craving so intense is what really needs to be understood. This is just not a person saying, I need another pill. The intensity of that drug craving it's difficult to describe, but it's very powerful.
How should we maybe approach younger people as opposed to seniors when it comes to their addiction? What's the game plan there, especially if they're addicted to drugs or alcohol?
Well, and maybe they're addicted to the digital world and social
Right?
media,
Yeah.
which we do see. I've seen people who have withdrawal symptoms when you take away their anything with a screen in their life, and you will see 2 or 3 days later. I've seen sweats, I've seen irritability, I've seen all the symptoms of withdrawal, and heart rate goes up from a digital addiction. So I know it's real. Now, for our young folks, is there's a lot of apathy right now, a lot of apathy about their future. The last couple of years, we had some of the highest academic failure than we've ever seen. And so kids generally, and I'm making a broad statement, are not doing well as it relates to both academics and in their social development. Kids need that with their social development. They need to go through those normal stages. What they've been through the last couple of years is not normal. So we've got to understand their needs. And we also know that addiction is starting at younger ages. Uh, Age 9 right now tends to be about the age that many kids are exposed to pornography on the internet. Well, that's alarming. And they begin a pattern at age 9 that can kind of take them down a path where they add more and more addiction as they go along. So this is very real for our kids. We need to understand that they're vulnerable to addiction. Um, so
Do you think as well, because of the fact with the COVID-19 pandemic, many young people have been isolated away from their friends, away from school, that perhaps that fueled the digital addiction?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen situations where kids were supposedly doing school virtually with a screen, but on their other device or their phone, they're playing online games with the kids in the class. So um, uh, generally speaking, we had significant online academic failure. It did not work. It did not work well at all, even for teachers. Now, that did set the kids up for a sense of kind of general failure. And we've got to understand that developmentally, depending on the age of the kid, they need to go through certain stages that is a part of socialization. And we know that masking the kids was not of help. I can tell you right now, for the younger kids, we're seeing where speech development occurs, we are seeing speech pathologists who are very busy because of delayed language development.
Wow. Dr. Greg Jantz is a psychologist and author of When a Loved One is Addicted, available at placeofhope.com. Dr. Jantz, thanks so much for joining us today from Washington State.
Oh, very good to be with you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.